Hello everyone, this is Pomon bringing you yet another Fire Emblem tier list. Today we're going to do a ranking for all the playable characters in the most recent installment in the series, Fire Emblem Engage. Most recent installment by the time I'm recording this, and hopefully by the time I release it too. I mean, shouldn't take that long considering Fortune's Wave has been announced, but the release date hasn't been set yet. So I'd really have to do something wrong to not be able to release this in time. So, Fire Emblem Engage has, honestly, a pretty tight cast of playable units, not too long, not too short. Some of the characters included here are even not playable, as you might have noticed. That's because this is the only tier list I was able to find that didn't include the emblems. If you are interested in that, I might consider doing a ranking for the emblems or talking a little bit about my feelings on how all the emblems rank between each other, even considering the DLC ones. I've tried them all. I think there's definitely some winners and some losers in that category, but those are like additional. The emblems aren't really characters, playable units. They are equipment. As cruel as that might sound, that you can give to your actual characters, to your actual army, and that's the units I'm going to talk about. Okay, yes, to make things very clear here. There's no tier list in the world that has this ordered alphabetically. I've been the one to order this alphabetically. Okay, so you know. So without any further ado, I guess the only final disclaimer, in case you don't know, in case it isn't obvious, is this is a ranking in terms of playability, in terms of how good you are in the game. It's not a ranking in terms of how much I like the character, because in that case, believe me, Céline would be a lot higher, and I don't know who would be a lot lower. Bunet. I don't like Bunet. But we're not going to talk about that today. We're just going to discuss gameplay, okay? The DNA tier list has been created solely for characters that do not apply, characters that aren't actually playable, that are just, their sprites appearing here, but they really shouldn't. So, we are now going to finally begin with the first unit, Alcryst. Now, Alcryst is a pretty interesting unit, I find. He might not be as insane as I considered him the first time I played the game, because when you mention Alcryst, there's almost like an inevitable comparison to be made with Etie, right? Because he's a very early game unit. Etie is also a very early game unit. They come at a time where you might not be as comfortable reclassing people. So it's not like you are going to be. You probably don't want to have more than one archer in your army. I guess that's the point. And they are archers. They both are archers. Etie is in the actual archer class with options to promote into bow knight and a sniper, while Alcryst is in a personal lord class, one of the many royal classes in this game, that allows him to uniquely promote into the class Tireur d'Elite, which is just, elite shooter in French. Because a lot of names of classes and countries in this game come from French origins, because that's the aesthetic the game was going for. So, Alcryst has some unique characteristics as that Tireur d'Elite class, because he is the only character that can promote into it. It's a class that basically functions statistically as a sniper, same movement. I'm pretty sure it has like more speed in exchange for less strength. But that's kind of Alcryst's selling card. It always has been. He's the faster of the two archers. He's not the hardest hitting one, but he greatly compensates that with the personal skill that Tireur d'Elite gets. Luna. That's right, Luna, one of the most powerful offensive skills in the whole Fire Emblem series is restricted to Alcryst and Alcryst only in this game. So obviously that means he does have some offensive potential that Etie isn't able to reach. Etie is about pure power, knowing exactly what damage you're going to do, and maybe, yeah, you can sneak a critical here and there. But whenever you play with Alcryst, it really feels like playing roulette. It's like playing Russian roulette, but you come out winning much more often than you don't. Whether it's a critical or Luna, or if you get lucky, both of the things activating at the same time, he normally pulls like a 70 to 80% chance of doing something while attacking. Normally even higher because he usually doubles the target, and you end up doing more damage than you expect. With Alcryst, it's like, I feel it's very useful for you to target an enemy, see that you are doing like 3 damage times 2 with a high percentage of critical, and if you skip combat, suddenly the enemy is dead. So he's not a unit you can really plan around, and I mean, the Tireur d'Elite class definitely does a lot for him, meaning he might not be as flexible as other units. In the Alcryst versus Etie debate, I do feel like I'm one of those people that thinks Etie comes out winning, because having just a lot of strength as an archer is a good thing. It's a good thing, and there's better ways to patch up speed than there are to patch up strength in this game. I think I definitely feel like the Lin emblem ring patches up speed problems much better than things like Erika patch up strength. Maybe if you take into account DLC emblems and you give absolutely everything to Alcryst, but it's very costly to do so. So he has a niche. He's not a bad unit, he's definitely above the average, but he's not a crazy unit either. By the time he comes, you might have some better people. He has some uniqueness. I'm going to put him on B tier for now, because I don't know how many characters I'm going to put in each tier, so I think B tier is like the safe bet. If I feel like all the characters I'm putting in A tier are really comparable to Alcryst, then I might bump him up a tier. I don't think he's ever going to go lower than B, so there you have it for now, okay? So, second character is going to be Alear. Alear, the main character, already. And, well, I'm going to first, like, move one of the Alears into DNA, so I don't have to move 2 sprites every time I reconsider Alear's placement. We're just going to put male Alear, just because I've played Engage like 4 times, and 3 of the times I played with female Alear. I feel like I relate better to female Alear, if that makes sense. Like, that's how I see the character in my mind. Alear is an interesting unit. I guess kind of comparable to Alcryst in the sense that Alear's capabilities don't come solely from her stats, but more so from her classes and her uniqueness. Alear has the unique option to be a divine, diviner or divine successor or something like that promotes into divine dragon. It's a very, very solid class in my opinion. It gives you the ability to use arts to do, combat with punches. Combat with brawling has been really nerfed in this game compared to like 3 houses, but it still has its uses. Like, for example, you can break domes, you can break bows, so it might be useful in certain situations. And it also gives you like a pretty good build boost, meaning you can use like almost any sword in the game without a penalty. You get a personal sword in this game called Libération. It's pretty good for filling back the engage, how is it called? Like the gauge? Yeah, the gauge you need to engage again. That's it. And then much later in the game, almost by the end of the game, you get another unique sword, which is even stronger, 1 to range. So You do have some unique options for damage. You do have the option for something unique by the end of the game. This is spoilers. I'm going to say it now. Engage Plus. This is the one character that we are always going to require to do Engage Plus, so that's nice. Definitely higher in the sense of uniqueness than Alcryst is, because I think the most important thing for Alear is the dragon effects for the emblems. Whenever you combine someone with an emblem, they get some unique characteristics depending on their combat style. Combat styles are like, you could consider them like higher tiers for classes. Like classes belong to a combat style. Alcryst's combat style for Lord is just covert, just like a sniper or thief is. But only Alear and a few more characters have the ability to go for the dragon combat style. And the one characteristic for dragon combat style is that it offers some really good buffs for rings, for emblems. Maybe some of the emblem buffs are more noticeable than others. I definitely feel like, for example, I don't know, the Micaiah emblem is not really worth using with a dragon. Like you are really getting more unique stuff out of using it with a key adept, for example. But Alear does get some unique utility with very important rings like Marth. Like honestly, the Ling one is kind of fun. The Roy one is pretty okay, to be honest. Celica is fine. Byleth is very good. Byleth is very good. Actually, the Byleth effect for dragons, I think, is one of the most noticeable. And Corrin is just plain broken. Corrin might be the most noticeable, to be honest. So some unique capabilities. Not a lot of dragons accessible for most of the game, especially if you're not using DLC. So you might be tempted to just keep Alear in her personal unique class and use some of the dragon's effects with the emblems. That's perfectly fine, and that I think justifies her use a little bit more than Alcryst. So I'm going to make it an A tier. I'm going to make it an A tier because I do think the uniqueness allows me to put Alear that high. Maybe it's a bit high, just like with Alcryst I felt maybe he was a bit low, maybe I put Alear a bit too high, but we'll reconsider that in the future. For now, that's going to be the placement. So, third unit, Alfred. Okay, here's another royal, because in this game there's a lot of royals with unique classes. But out of all the royals, Alfred might be one of the most underwhelming ones. First of all, his personal class, Avenir, in my opinion, takes away some of the best characteristics that kind of his commoner counterpart class Paladin has. Namely, stat buffs don't really compensate. I think he gets some good resistance and everything. Alfred is not going to become a resistance tank by any means. He gets an activation skill that can block damage. It's cool when it activates, but you're never going to actually rely on it. So that's nothing new. And he gets the ability to use both swords and lances in exchange for not having an S rank. And I feel like that's the worst part about Alfred, because he loses the ability to have, you know, a paladin with Sigurd use like Venomous Override or Calathbolg Override, which I think are just very valuable in this game. It's like a massive amount of damage for a row of enemies that you can just obliterate. Alfred loses that capability, so he might be better off as a paladin, and if you use him as a paladin, then what does he really have to offer when compared to other cavalry or to just other characters with good proficiencies for swords and for lances? Nothing really. Like, I think Alfred requires a good amount of training to stay relevant. He's definitely useful in the early game, so I'm not going to put him too low because he does have contributions in the early game that shouldn't be underestimated. But after the early game, I feel like you're more likely to bench Alfred, then you're not. It's not bad by any means, like you can make any unit in this game viable, and Alfred is definitely not a horrible unit, but he does run into some trouble even in hard mode. In Madeline he gets doubled continuously, speed growth and speed base are just very iffy, and he doesn't offer anything too unique, so I'm tempted to put him into C tier. As I said, let's see what we can what the game has to offer before I do any before I do any reconsideration of placement. Oh, okay, here's a pretty controversial unit, probably the most controversial unit in terms of gameplay, maybe in terms of story too, considering as supports and everything. Ever since the game came out, it's Anna. Anna has come back in the form of a child this time, and she's like a pretty weird unit. She comes in an axe wielding class, axe fighter, and she has the option to promote into either a warrior or a berserker. You can do some really fun stuff with her as a warrior. I feel as a berserker she probably also can work, but as a warrior you get the option to use bows. And then I think like her decent speed growth and her massive magic growth make her invaluable at using the Shining Bow. I feel like she's one of the best candidates to use the Shining Bow with a direct path from her promo, if that makes sense. Of course, just reclassing a mage into a warrior might be a better idea, and Anna does require a lot of investment. She has a very weak start, and people like to justify her weak start saying she has a lot of potential later in the game, but in Engage, as long as you train someone, really they have a lot of potential. Also, something I know people really enjoy using as a way to justify Anna's capabilities is that she comes into your army by the time you get the option to reclass, and because she has such a high magical growth, it might be a good idea to reclass her into a mage and just spam a bit of Great Sacrifice with Micaiah, get her some levels, and suddenly she's up to the level of your army, and actually maybe even better than some of the units you haven't been paying that much attention to. But I don't think that's fair to other units, because other units could be the ones using that reclass option that maybe they would really benefit from. Like maybe if you are going to complain about Alcryst's mobility, maybe you can argue, okay, but you can always reclass him into normal archer and then promote into Bunet. Same for Alear, you could go for Paladin, you could go for Bunet, you could go for Wyvern. If you want to keep the use of swords, even more classes, like I don't know. Really, the point here is investing in Anna. Like, Anna getting good with investment shouldn't be a reason to justify her, because anyone gets good with investment. And Anna does require a lot of investment. So I'm not going to put her into F tier, because I think that's reserved to units that actually don't have the potential or don't satisfy any need in your army. And Anna can become like sort of a magical nuke. I've been able to train her in Madeline, meaning her investment isn't crazy to do. It's completely viable, and by the end you get a pretty good unit out of it. But she does require a lot of investment, especially compared to the rest of your army, so I'm not going to put her higher than the tier, because that initial investment is really a reason against using her. So that's basically it. Alright. Next unit, the final unit starting with the A, is Amber. And Amber really compares favorably against Alfred. That's my impression. He's basically like Alfred. If you've been training him for a while, they are sort of similar. They are sort of similar, but Amber might be slightly better in certain aspects. If Alfred has an iffy speed growth, Amber kind of sacrifices that speed growth completely for the ability to have a fuck ton of strength and some like decentish defense, but no more than Alfred. Really, this guy is just built for doing a lot of damage, and I'm pretty sure having a decent skill which makes him into, well, decent at getting criticals, I guess. He comes with a killer lance, so I guess that's like sort of a selling point for him. I feel like the strength is a more important thing to have, because as I said, one of the best things you can do with a cavalry is giving them the secret ring and turning them into an override machine. And Amber does come early enough to be able to get the stuff like override, like counter, and compensate for some of his weaknesses. And if you want reclass options, having lances as a base is actually pretty good for reclasses, because he can go for stuff like Falconite to completely patch up his speed. He can go for Wyvern, which gives him, I think, a little bit of speed, but makes him a lot tankier and more mobile. Being a flyer in this game is just great. Really, any class that keeps the lances, halberdier, even, I don't know, a hero with lances as a secondary option are good for him. And he's just better than Alfred at doing any of those things. I know. Considering I'm talking about so many reclasses, maybe it's not fair to compare him directly to Alfred, because you could be using both in different classes. I'm just saying, if I put Alfred in C tier, Amber has to be at least a little bit above him. Because what you don't get during the early maps, you get as, you know, getting a competent unit without training, you know? Alfred shines more during the earlier game because Amber just isn't available. So by that point, Alfred's contributions clearly have to be taken into account. But Amber, I think, tends to be a better unit by the time you get him and requires no investment whatsoever by the time you get him, obviously. So I'm going to put Amber slightly over Alfred. I don't know if this is a good idea. Please don't bully me or anything. This is how I see it. Alright. Boucheron. Interesting unit, actually. I have to be completely honest here. I've never used him. I'm not one of those people that likes to give their opinion on something when they haven't actually tried. And Boucheron is one of the few units in this game that I haven't tried. I've been waiting for a while until I beat Engage like multiple times to give my opinion. By this time I've beaten Engage 4 times, and none of those times I felt like using Boucheron. Because let's be honest, he's sort of boring. He's the first unit to get the same class as someone else, as Anna. And Anna is just... You can say a lot of bad stuff about Anna, but she's fun. She's fun to use. Boucheron is just, you know, foot axe unit. Same promos like Berserker Warrior. And really the guy is all about that kind of utility, you know, good damage, good accuracy, and not really much else because speed is only decent. But he does have a very, very noticeable thing going for him. He has the highest build growth in the whole game. Meaning if you are going for a class that needs build to become competent, like an axe wielder for example, to use even heavier axes, then he's your guy. So he's really, no pun intended, he's really built for using like heavy weaponry like axes, and he might have a lot of potential as a berserker that other units can't even dream of, because build is a very difficult thing to complete with. But I think his most unique like niche might be as a mage cannoneer, because mage cannoneer accuracy and damage actually depends a lot on your strength, your skill, and your build, which are all like exactly the highest selling points for Boucheron. So if you have the DLC, I think Boucheron's placement might be a bit higher. If you don't have it, it might be a bit lower. I'm going to try and make an average. I'm going to say without the DLC, I think he's around here. maybe slightly over Ana. With the DLC as a mage cannoneer, considering how good that class can be and using it actually for damage, I think he would rank around here. So I'm going to put him in C tier, under Alfred. His early game contributions aren't that good. He does need the reclasses or the training or whatever. Gets doubled pretty easily, more than Alfred, I feel. I'm pretty sure he's the first unit that I got killed when I played the game for the first time. That tends to make like a very, very negative impression on you. So yeah, that's Boucheron's placement. Slightly under average, maybe like more than slightly under average, but you know what I mean. He's not the best unit in the game. He's never going to be. He does have his niche usage, which is why I'm not going to put him like on like high investment like you, but he's there. He's also there for the early game, so he can get some skills from the earlier emblems, which is also good. Alright, well, now we come to probably my most hated character in the game, and you are going to have to believe me here when I say this doesn't affect at all my ability to judge him as a unit, because I also think he's a pretty lousy unit. Bunet just isn't that good. He's a Great Knight, a class that is neither here nor there, so if you want to do anything with him in the late game, you have to go for a reclass. And you know, coming with swords and axes, like what is he even going to do uniquely? Of course you can go for something completely different, but just humor me. Like, this guy is just tanky and strong. He's a bit slow, sort of like these three guys I've mentioned. Wants to be a tank. Maybe you want to reclass him into something purely tanky like a general, something a bit more versatile like a hero, high mobility with a wyvern. Those are the options I think we are looking for, right? Something that keeps the bulk, keeps the damage, but maybe gives him a bit of a saving point. The thing is, he comes in the mid game, and yet, while other units are start off completely pulling their weight, like from the get-go, this guy is asking for a reclass if he wants to be useful. His stats, I feel like they come a bit short by the time you get him, because because being just purely tanky is not that good in Engage. Like purely stacking up defense and strength isn't as useful as having a good synergy with an emblem, or being able to have like massive mobility or stuff like that. Engage is a game that is almost asking to be broken by using an emblem in a particular situation. But this guy doesn't have the best synergy with any emblem, and what's even worse, the emblems that he does want, like maybe Roy or Sigurd, they aren't available for him, because he comes just after the, losing the initial wave of emblems, okay? If you are staying here yet, then you deserve to get spoiled a little bit. So he doesn't have access to a lot of emblems that would actually be beneficial for him. He can't have counter for a very long time. He can't have, he can't be the one wielding the Roy ring and then getting some extra bonuses on his stats. He just doesn't have any of that. He does have like decent synergy with Ike, maybe with Erica. You could use him with Lucina to like provide a very good dual guard to other cavalry, but he's not unique in any aspect. He doesn't have access to early game ring abilities. His stats aren't anything crazy, and his starting class is also not good. So I think this is the definition of a bad unit, to be honest. And I don't want you to think that I'm putting this guy low as a unit because I don't like him as a character. If anything, I think the opposite is true. I think I might not like him as a character partially because my first impression of him was, wow, this is a lousy unit. So there you have it. First F tier, no one on S tier yet, and yeah, that's going to change at some point, I promise. I'm not going to be too harsh, but I don't want to put just anyone on S tier. So, Next. Now, next is my favorite character, actually. My favorite character is Céline. I think I mentioned that before already. Céline is a very early game unit, a bit later than Alfred, but you know, she comes like, what is that, like chapter 3, chapter 4, I don't remember exactly the number, but the chapter with the windmills. She joins your army immediately. She comes equipped with a ring, the Celica ring. Maybe not the best ring in the game, but very good during the early game, and one she has very good synergy with, and she's going to basically get free usage of that ring. Like, you're guaranteed to have Celica with Céline for that one chapter. She has better magic than Clanne, so she tends to be like one of the best users of Warp Ragnarok for like 3 or 4 chapters until you get Citrinne and you're able to switch it. Maybe Anna as a reclass. You just don't have that many mages during the early game, and there's actually like a fair amount of armor and I don't know, some like bandits even. Units that have low resistance and that you can really do some damage against with a mage. So I think Céline's performance during the early game is absolutely stellar. Much more noticeable than Alfred's, much more noticeable. Like, honestly, this unit tends to be like among your top 5, even without an investment, for the first 3 chapters after she joins. I think that's a fair assessment. Like, for the windmill, for the castle, and for the Fog of War chapter, and probably also for the Anna chapter, Céline is going to be exceptional. And that's something that should be taken into account. Her long-term potential is a bit weird because she has some strangely balanced growth. She just has like a very, very good stat line all over the board. And she also gets like a good amount of growths on everything except luck, which is just crazy high. It's much higher than the rest. It's like 60 something. I think it might be the highest luck growth in the game, or along those lines. I don't like to check stats to actually... I like to speak from what I remember so that my impressions, my tier lists are more genuine. So just so you know, I'm saying all of this from memory. Céline is good. I feel like she's pretty decent during the early. She has some uniqueness because she has a unique class. She's a royal. And as a promoted unit, she gets Ignis. Ignis gets like a static amount of buff damage, which can be very useful to trigger with like multi-hit skills. Like, for example, when I say multi-hit skills, I mean like activation special attacks like Marth's Low Start Rush, or even Leaf's quadruple hit, I guess. So she has some niche usages. Ignis is just very good. Synergy with Celica is something you're kind of short of in your army. Like, it's very easy to get a niche for Céline because not a lot of characters want the Celica ring. That might sound like a bad reason, but she's actually like pretty good at finding a way into your army. If you keep her in her base class, she promotes and she gets the ability to heal you. That's also like some good utility to just have around. Probably can make a pretty good use of Micaiah as well and just become almost a full support unit. I tried turning her into more of a physical unit, and then I gave her the Tiki ring. And she's actually pretty good at using the Tiki ring because she's one of the few units in the game that has a lot of potential for both physical and magical damage. So that's fun if you want to try it. Definitely not as good as Alcryst, because mages just are insane, and I feel like the mages that are actually insane have like better things going for them. Meanwhile, Alcryst is a bit more unique. Like, I do admit that Tireur d'Elite is a better class than Bidam is. So low beer rank is okay. Maybe Alcryst can go to A rank, but I don't think I'm ever going to put her all the way up to A rank. She's a good unit. I really like her. I think she's fun to use, but I don't think she's that incredible. Alright, Chloé. Now here is a unit that definitely, like, if Céline is able to make her way into the top 5 for the early game, Chloé just has to go into the top 3 easily. Because she's the only flyer you get during the early game before you get the ability to reclass, and being able to fly in certain maps is like very, very, very good. And I doubt you're going to get like a good flyer in time for the bridge, which is a map where, you know, having a flyer sort of is very useful. She's also like you know, very versatile in her joining map in the windmills. Maybe not as incredible in the castle, but she's okay. Has decent damage, has some very, very good speed. Honestly, isn't even that fragile. She's just an all-around very good unit on a very good class with very good promotion options, because she can go for either overkill speed and a bit of magical secondary damage with Griffin, or you can turn her into a wyvern and actually make her into a very competent physical fighter. If you give her Sigurd early on, she's insane. If you give her Marth, honestly, she's probably insane. If you give her Lynn later on, insane. Flyers are just very good, and Chloé can be a flyer with, like, without any cost at all implied. And she's actually the only flyer, like the only physical flying fighter you're going to get for a long while in the game. So if you're going for a very low investment run, maybe not reclassing so much, Chloé should be considered as one of your best units. Now, she is very good, but her contributions do fall off a little bit during the late game, because yeah, she benefits a lot in the early. She can make the mid game very useful, but she has nothing incredibly unique going for her. Her growths, while she has very good speed, are nothing like too insane. So she doesn't have the potential to become like a game-breaking unit, in my opinion. Not more than any other unit does. She just has like a very, very solid start going for her. So if you really value that start, as I do, you want to put her very high, but I don't think she quite makes it into the S rank. I'm going to put her highest in the A rank for now. I have an idea of what I need a unit to do, a unit to be, for me to consider her an S tier unit, and Chloé just doesn't cut it for me. Just doesn't cut it. And I know after all the good things I've said, maybe I should just put her into the S tier and then lower her. But if I'm going to lower her later, then what's the point? So there you have it. Okay, now going for Citrinne. Citrinne, the mage you get in the bridge chapter, same where you get Alcryst. So like, still in the early game, still able to get use out of the, you know, to get skills from the early emblems. Still a pretty decent unit. This is the definition of a magical nuke. One of the highest magical growths in the game, maybe tied for the highest with Ivy or something like that. Yes, very high magic, decent skill, very high resistance, purely oriented to a magical role. The thing is, magical classes in this game kind of suck. Because Sage isn't that crazy, High Priest is like, High Priest is a bit better, but still not insane. So you want to either have a unique magical class like Céline does to have some shining moments, like, you know, that secondary physical damage, or you're stuck with, you know, being a foot unit. What do you do then? Like, you promote into Mage Knight to get a bit better movement, but you're still like a cavalry, which isn't as good as a flyer. So Citrinne is good, but she's not insane, and she's not very versatile. Like, I think it's better to be forced to be a physical unit in Engage than to be forced to be a magical one. Because if you're forced to be physical, you still have like lots of options. But Citrinne being forced to deal magical damage for the rest of her life basically leaves like 3 realistic options open, right? She can be a high priest, she can be a sage, she can be a mage knight. And none of them are like insane, in my opinion. None of them are going to go crazy. So she's okay, but the late game potential is really lacking for me. And honestly, by the time she comes, Céline is probably better. Honestly, I would take reclassed Anna over Citrinne any time of the day, even if starting stats are lower, because she does have a very good speed growth. I just don't think... I think Citrinne is one of the units that is the most screwed up by her long-term potential, so I'm not going to put her very high. I'm going to put her here, because she does require the investment, maybe not as much investment as Anna, but the end result is also like much worse than Anna is. So yeah, there you have it. Sorry Citrinne fans, I really like her, honestly. Like I think she has a very pretty design and all, but she's being a mage is kind of a letdown in this game. And speaking of magical letdowns, here's Clanne. First mage you get in the game, incredibly early unit. Basically, by the time you are over the tutorial, you have Clanne. You're able to feed him some kills. He can get a good amount of speed. He can get a decentish amount of magic, and then maybe he can be helpful for the early game. His selling point over Céline for the early game is speed. He has a lot of speed, very good speed growth. Unfortunately, his magical growth is kind of poor. And when you look at his personal growths, it becomes apparent that he just doesn't have a lot of magic. He kind of wants to... his personal growths are very oriented to physical damage. So he would maybe prefer to be reclassed into a physical class, but if you do that, all the training and all the growth you got as a mage are kind of wasted. So he's one of the few units that I feel is slightly screwed up by being an early game unit. If he came in a bit later and you immediately reclass him into something physical, kind of like you do with Asama in Fates, for example, like that's a fun path to take. But this guy, he's not too great. He does have some shining early, like very early game contributions, some things that only Clanne can do. If I'm going to justify putting Céline this high because of her ability to take down enemy bandits, to take down enemy armor knights, then I have to be honest, Clanne is able to do that as well. And you could decide to give him the Celica ring, or maybe the Mikaia ring, and then he gets a buff for magic that honestly not a lot of units want to compete for. So he's not without use. He's not a bad unit. He's just a bit of a letdown because of his magical start, and because even if you reclass him into something, just being speedy isn't that great, right? So I definitely think he's over Boucheron. Like, Boucheron has more of a long-term role. He's more of an early to mid-game unit for me, and then he ends up like maybe feeling a strange niche in your army. For example, I once made him into a mage knight with Corrin to be able to freeze people from afar with Thoron. That's actually pretty useful. I also turned him into a sage and ended up benching him because his damage just wasn't that incredible. I think he performs slightly better as a mage knight, but the physical damage just isn't there. So don't think about that when you make him a mage knight. just warning you. Anyway, yeah, also don't reclass him into a physical unit. It's just, he's sort of a beginner's pitfall unit in my opinion, right? I'll leave it at that. He's not incredibly bad, he's not incredibly good, he's just average. So C rank is just fine. Alright, okay. Now we are talking. Diamant. Diamant, pretty good unit right here. Prince of Brodia, unique class, and unlike Alcryst, who's purely focused on doing damage, this guy is mainly an enemy face unit. And he really likes staying in his original class. There's not a lot of incredible sword fighting like foot classes in this game, but if there was any, it would be his. Lord promoting into successor, meaning successor, basically, inheritor to the throne, as he is, has the unique ability to probably the only trigger ability that is historically considered even more broken than Luna, Soul. Soul allows him to, when it activates, recover a little bit of health. If you give this guy the ability to counter attack from range, you can just put him into, in the middle of a group of enemies, and if he activates Soul, he just recovers a lot of health. So what do you need for Diamant to be useful? High stats. High stats. Basically, a unit that has Soul wants to, if you're going to bet on this guy activating Soul, you need to have a high skill to be able to activate it reliably, high defense, so that the amount of HP you're losing doesn't go down faster than the amount of HP you're recovering with Soul, high damage, so that Soul recovery is higher, high speed, to be able to maybe avoid some attacks and help with your survivability, and double the enemies for more chances at getting Soul. And he does have all of that. He only has one weakness. Resistance is very bad. Thankfully, I don't think he's the type of unit to counter mages. There are some better options to counter mages, and mages in this game generally are scary, but you don't tend to battle like incredibly large packs of mages. The biggest amount of mages you can see is like 3 in a group, and then maybe you can take care of them from afar with something like Astra Storm. If you can deal with the mages, paralyze them, distract them, and then you let Diamant at the rest of the enemies in the map, he has a high chance of actually, coming out unscathed and just either killing them or doing an incredible amount of damage against them. Also comes with the Roy emblem by the time you get him. Good synergy with that, because his high stats become even higher, and he gets the Binding Blade at high level, meaning 1 to range, very strong, very reliable. Good options against lances as well with the Lance River. Worm Slayer is always nice to have. The Ike Ring works very well during the mid game as well. Maybe I'm not a big fan of using Great Ether with him, but there are some situations where that's definitely going to work. And having access to Ragnell is incredible. It's even better than the Binding Blade, I would say. Urban is also pretty cool to have if you want to use a strong axe attack. Incredibly solid unit. S tier performance, really. Maybe not like absolutely game-breaking endgame, but he's like the lowest investment high-performance unit you can have. Just by having Diamant, using Roy, then by the time you don't have Roy, very little time after that, you get Ike, you give him Ike, and then you have to decide either sticking with Ike or giving him back Roy, and that's a unit that's honestly going to carry you through most of the physical menaces of the whole game. So I don't know. He really has no weaknesses aside from the mages. He might not be the perfect unit, but for a unit that can work with almost no investment, he's damn near that. So yeah, I want to put him there. I'm going to keep him there. Alright, well, this has been slightly spoiled by my review of Alcryst, but here's Etie. Very high potential at dealing a lot of damage, very accurately, and kind of nothing else. And she starts with bows, and she honestly works very well with both. with bows or with reclassing. And I honestly tend to think that keeping her with bows is a good idea, because attacking enemies and doing a lot of damage and them not being able to retaliate in this game is pretty powerful. She has incredible synergy with the Lean ring, but she also has access to the early game rings if you want to go for that. She might be able to use the Divine Speed from Marth. No, Divine Speed isn't inheritable actually, forget I said that. And she definitely has some rings here and there that I'm forgetting about that she can make good use of. Maybe build +1 or +2 from Leaf. Maybe, I don't know, maybe just strength plus something from Roy. Those kind of things are fine to get and do give her a little bit of an advantage over characters that come in the mid to late game, because they are going to have to wait for a while before getting those skills. She's just better than Alcryst in my opinion. Much more reliable, very good synergy with a lot of emblems, and if you want to go for an even more powerful option than a sniper, she has the Bow Knight promo that gives her like incredible movement, and the Warrior reclass, which allows her to keep the bows, also gives her the ability to use axes. Honestly, she is still going to use bows most of the time, but the main point is that her damage is going to go like absolutely insane. Like Etie as a warrior with Alacrity on Lin, she doesn't have to worry about the enemy having a hand axe or not, because she just attacks twice before they can retaliate, and normally she kills them by the time that happens. And unlike Alcryst, she doesn't have to rely on activation skills. She just does so much damage that the enemies die before they can do anything. So what's more important? I still think that, you know, Dragon Emblem and everything is very strong, so I want to keep Alear over her, but she's with no doubt a very strong unit. So A tier has to be like slightly over Alcryst for me, just to signal that difference. The fact that I think she's more reliably going to turn into a strong unit, even without the ability to go into a royal class. Well, speaking of royals, Cursive, not playable, so does not apply. And we go into another royal class. This time it's Fogado. Fogado's personal class honestly might be the single worst personal class. I know I said that about Alfred earlier, but I take it back. Has to be Fogado. First of all, the activation skill is worthless. Absolutely worthless. It gives back like a partial amount of the damage you take, but Fogado really isn't suited for tanking enemies. He's much better at attacking enemies. His selling points are a bit of speed, a bit of strength, sort of a middle ground in terms of offense when compared to Alcryst and Etie, for example, considering he's also a bow. But he does have the higher mobility because of him having a horse. It's a bit complicated to sell you on what exactly Fogado does in the game. He's like I'm here, I'm not, I'm here, I'm not unit. Turns to do a lot of chip and dip, would benefit incredibly from having counter by the time you get him, but he doesn't have access to counter for a very long time. He has a decent amount of magic, which means he can use the Shining Bow, but not high enough to do anything crazy. He's just like sort of a combat utility unit. Fast enough to do some stuff, powerful enough to cause some damage, but never so insane that you can outright wipe an enemy with him. I've tried some builds with Fogado. After considering it a lot, I think his best build might be with Erika, because Erika just gives him maybe that buff to damage that he's looking for, and Erika also provides some small boost to her personal, the twin strike thing gets a little better with a cavalry. In terms of reclasses, I don't think you really want to reclass out of where he's at. If you do, then maybe turn him into a wyvern and lose the bows completely. I don't think warrior is like a crazy option for him, because with warrior you're kind of looking for a lot of damage and he just doesn't have that. But yeah, Erika ring, Roy ring, maybe Marth ring even. Sigurd worked decently for me first time I tried him. Lucina, if you want to go for full support. Maybe if you want this guy to just assist you, him having high mobility, 1-2 range, Lucina ring, and also being able to do dual guards for horses could be useful. He's not bad. He's low investment, but he's not insane either. Like, I kind of... Okay, I'm going to lower Boucheron and I'm going to put him here. Over Clanne, under Alfred for me. Because I do think his class, his join time isn't too helpful either. If you promote some of the units in your army, they are probably better. He does much better than Bunet, for example. They join at the same time without investment, and that's to be considered, but he's just not insane. You know, he's kind of in this middling ground level together with these other guys. So yeah, C rank is fine for Fogado. Yes, slightly under average for me, even with his rail class. Ooh, okay, Framme is the first healer you get in the game, and healers in this game are very particular. They are actually not... there's no class in this game that is limited to only healing. Every healer in this game... Well, not every healer in this game, sorry. The main healing class in this game is Martial Monk. They have the ability to do combat with arts, with, punches. And they also get the ability to use staves. And Framme isn't too good at doing, well, either, really. But you have to understand, Martial Monk isn't a class built on the concept of dealing damage or on the concept of even healing an incredible amount. It's based on the concept of utility, and especially chain guarding. Chain guarding is an ability unique to classes that belong to the key adept battle style. Most common is normally martial monk, and the promotion, which is called martial master, something like that. I think Framme performs okay in that role, and you have to understand that it's a pretty unique role for Framme to have for a long time in the game, because to be able to become a martial monk, or any class in this game really, you need to have the weapon proficiencies for that class. And getting weapon proficiencies for arts, for, punching, is very complicated. You can basically only get them from like very late game, the last emblem you ever get, or Byleth, which is like mid to late game. If you get the Tiki emblem, you do get to have the arts proficiency a bit earlier, and then maybe you could reclass someone with better potential into that role. Like, for example, Anna could be reclassed into a martial monk. So that could be an interesting role for her, maybe. But Framme's utility basically comes from the fact that she is the only one that can do chain guards during the early game, at a time where you really need it, because, the army you have is the army you have to use. Maybe, I don't know, you're playing an Iron Man, so if your units die, you need the ones that are still there to keep working, so you just keep using Framme. You keep using Framme to hold the line, to use a chain guard and all of that. And also healing is like much more useful during the early game, because normally that's the time when you take like cheap damage, you need a quick recovery before you go into battle again. Framme is useful. She's just not crazy, she's just useful. And the long-term potential is inexistent, like it's not there. So I can't really put her very high here. I think she's better than Citrinne. And honestly, like, yes, her early game contributions make her better than Anna for me. But Anna can do some game-breaking stuff. Honestly, Anna is a bit better than Boucheron, in my opinion. Nah, but the investment is too high. This is kind of interchangeable if you think about it. I'm going to say that Boucheron is definitely Framme over those two. The worst late game combat out of all these three, but much better early game. Much better early game. So yes, early game contributions alone put her at the highest spot in the tier. Never going over that. I do think Clanne has the early game contributions, maybe a bit less noticeable than his sister, but he also has better potential in the long run, so that's why I keep him there. Yeah, that's going to be my placement for Framme. I think you get better options for healers, for support, and if you reclass her out of that, then the stats are very poor. Bases are non-existent really, so yeah, she's not a ball of stats. She's there for the support, and she can do it to a certain extent. Sorry, Framme, but you're not going higher than that. Okay, Goldmary. Interesting unit. I'm going to talk here because this is one of the first like sort of late game units we get, about the problem I think you can have with emblems in this game. I think the most uncomfortable place to join the army in terms of getting skills from emblems is the mid game. From the point you get like the IB group to the point you get Hortensia and Seadall, basically. All of those people can't benefit from early game rings, but they are also a bit too early to benefit from getting them back later in the game. So they are stuck at being able to use only half of the emblems and only the little bit of them that you are able to get back by the time you recruit them. So for example, you get Fogado, you want Fogado to train up on some rings, and then you say, oh, but I only have Lucina and Lynn. Like, that's not really an option because maybe I'm interested in giving those skills to someone else. So they really come out losing mid-game units. Goldmary has the benefit of being, if this is going to sound very weird, late enough to be in time, just in time to get back the early game rings. Comes with the last of the mid-game rings, with Erika being force equipped on her partner Rosado at the same time during her map. And she's just a pretty competent unit, physical combat unit, good amount of stats, not the best base class hero, but by the time you get Goldmary, the ability to reclass has become like very common. And honestly, a reclass might do her some good. I've tried her as a halberdier, that works pretty well. I'm guessing Wyvern obviously works very well. Bunet is also like generally a very good option to reclass a physical unit into. Goldmary just has a solid stat line, joins at the right time, and I would even argue has a decent personal ability. So this is one of those weird cases where I don't think Goldmary is crazy. I don't think Goldmary has anything unique or anything particularly great going for her, but I do have to put her high because she's the lowest investment, like filler good combat you can get. Maybe like, okay, she's not like low investment, stay in your path Diamant type, and she's not come in during the very late game and still be a beast, like, I don't know. Well, some examples I will mention later, but she's just solid. She's just solid, and just with her late game contributions, I think she can, on average, you can expect her to perform better than most of the units in C tier. So I'm going to put her in low B tier. It might be a bit too generous. Maybe I should swap her with Amber or maybe in here, but if you think about it, like Amber, like what? Amber joins, doesn't do a lot in the castle, maybe does a little bit in the snow and cathedral, and then he's stuck with like Santh map, Fog of War map, which, you know, impedes his moving a lot. Then comes the, you know, the Storm Castle, which is okay, it's decent. Then there's the escaping from enemies coming from behind, you know, the Dancer chapter. Also, like, okay, like Amber's contributions, he gets a bad set of maps performing, and Goldmary, I think, comes back into the, well, comes for the first time into the army by the time you start. You are starting to need like a good ball of stats, a good character to fill in, to battle bosses with, that kind of stuff, just in time for the port, where she can perform decently. I think she's okay. Nothing crazy, but okay. So I'm just going to put her there because actually, like, this is the, you know, this is the line of the average. She's slightly over average. There you have it. Alright, Gregory, well, Gregory obviously not playable, but Gree is a mage. And there's not a lot more I can say about him than that. This is a DLC unit, and DLC units come at promoted level 1. And considering they come at promoted level 1, I'm going to assume that you don't want to do anything incredibly game breaking, and you're going to recruit them by the time you have, well, some promoted units in your army. So I would assume any time during the mid game, right? So this guy could technically get early game rings, but generally he's not going to. He's just going to be a solid option to do a lot of magical damage with a slightly better speed and a slightly inferior maybe resistance and magic than Citrinne, but along the lines of Citrinne. Just trained up, solid, decent personal skill, to be honest, that allows him to be a bit dodgy, a bit crazy with that. I don't know, I think he's cool. He's a good filler mage unit, and as I said, being a mage and being stuck to being a mage isn't the best, but if anyone can make it work, it's probably him. Still not going to reach the average line for me, probably the most disappointing out of the DLC characters, like, you know, they needed to add a mage, and there's Gregory, but, you know, top of C tier is okay. Like, I don't really have much to say about Gregory except, you know, good mage. Better than a pretty unique mage? No. Unique class? No. Better than some of the mages I've considered to have some shortcomings? Yeah, absolutely. Yes, stay there, boy. But honestly, I think Goldmary is generally going to feel a better niche than Gregory is, because, yeah, Gregory can be useful as a mage, and that's it. Goldmary at least has better reclassing options. So, yeah, even though his contributions, like, you could assume that you can recruit this guy in chapter 6, and then he can be an absolute beast for the early game. If you want to go for that path, okay, then I would rank him a bit higher, but I think that's like a very dangerous hypothesis to do. Hortensia. Okay, a unit that sort of falls into the Framme category for me, in the sense that she's So she's a healer, just like Framme is, also has the ability to do magic instead of punching, and she's a flying healer. With a personal skill that is actually crazy good, that allows her to use staves at 1-2 range instead of 1 range. So that means sometimes maybe you can heal from a bit afar, which allows you to stay out of, I don't know, a range enemies range, something of the sort. Maybe not as relevant in a game with counter, but it's pretty valuable to get. It's pretty cool to have a unit with that flexibility as a healer, and I think you should always keep Hortensia as a healer. Not because of the same reasons as Framme. Framme just comes early game into a healer class, and you need a healer during the early game, so she's stuck with that. With Hortensia, it's more like she's not going to perform better in any other class, because her unique royal class that promotes into that thing Sleipnir Rider gives her the unique ability to keep uses of support like healing magic with a trigger percent at times, so you can keep uses of warp, you can keep uses of rescue, of healing. It's just crazy good. Honestly, in my opinion, probably makes her into the best healer in the game. Maybe not in terms of like pure amount of magic healed, but yes, in terms of the support she can give. Because her magic isn't that high, and her strength isn't that high, so if you reclass her into anything else, she's going to be forced to do combat, and she's not that good at doing combat. You should just keep her as a support unit, and then she's going to be extremely competent at that. In fact, so competent that I'm going to put her into A tier, a bit higher than Alear. A bit higher than Alear. There you have it. There you have it. Nah. No, that's a bit crazy. But slightly under Alear. I think that's fair. Yes. Very solid unit to just get, start healing, have a good healer in your army. Maybe like, and this is kind of crazy to say about a unit in this game, doesn't even need a ring to perform very, very, very well. If you're going to give her anything, give her, I don't know, Micaiah, because she's always going to be afar from the enemy, so you can just use Great Sacrifice in a very concrete moment, and she can do well with that. And she also might benefit from having like Thane against a single enemy that needs to be damaged, like a very strong armor. Yes, no potential as combat, only support, but potentially the best support unit in the game, so that has to count for something. Better than the raw damage that Etie can provide, in my opinion, and again, no investment, just comes at level 19 unpromoted, you just give her a Master Seal, becomes a Sleipnir Rider, and there you have it. That's the unit. Simple unit to understand, but that doesn't make her any less powerful. Hyacinth, her father, is not playable, but her sister, curious that they all three got stuck together, her sister is. Ivy is the first unit that you get after losing the rings originally. So the first unit that doesn't have access to the early game abilities, the early game rings. So that means no counter for a while and no stuff. And it's incredible how a unit can have all that stuff going against her and still be, in my opinion, one of the best units in the game, because Ivy is just incredible. Incredible magic, good enough speed to not get doubled by a lot of stuff, and very, very, very good resistance as well. She's basically a flying magical nuke of a character that is going to double much more reliably than any of your other supposed magical nukes like Citrinne or Grey, and that maybe doesn't have the overkill speed that that Clanne gets, but I don't think she needs it. She's just able at doing. She's just very good at doing damage. She's able to take some attacks from the enemies actually, and synergizes very well with a lot of rings. She comes with the Lean Ring equipped, which is a very good option for her to patch up her, average speed and turn her into a unit that can reliably double. She's also pretty decent at using Veyle. In the late game, her using Micaiah with Nosferatu is actually like insanely powerful. She can just clear up entire waves of enemies. And that's not even taking into account the fact that she's an incredible unit to get even without any ring. By the time you get her, she's going to be like one of your best combat units, because her stats are very good and she has the ability to do magic, to heal, and to fly, which is all incredibly valuable. If you're lacking in healers, Ivy is going to immediately earn herself a place in your army. If you're lacking in mages, then say no more. Probably better combat than any mage you have by that point. Flyers are insanely powerful in this game, as I said, and even more during the Solm arc, because in the Santh map you really want to have a flyer to, ignore the terrain and just go for enemies unimpeded. Ivy is able to do all that and more, which makes her, in my opinion, the best unit we've discussed so far. It's true that Diamant doesn't require as much investment. Like, Diamant is a more reliable unit to snowball into a monster, but Ivy's highest peak is higher than Diamant's. Her personal skill isn't that insane, Grasping Void isn't crazy, but Grasping Void is very, very, very useful against mages, and that gives her a very niche use, which is just tanking mages and killing them back. So yeah, the ability to combine with Micaiah just makes her very good, and she comes at a time where you need some strong units to put in work, and she performs very well. So yeah, I don't think there's any reason not to put her in S tier, highest so far, because she's just better than all the units we've discussed so far. Good start, good synergy with everything, unique class, and good endgame. What is there not to like? Alright, another unit to discuss, Jade. Well, Jade is a bit complicated to talk about. If Ivy is the first unit you get after losing the rings, Jade is the last unit you get before losing them, meaning she technically has access to the rings. But if you want to get her any skill in the rings, you have to either use the arena and invest some like bone fragments and everything, or do like grinding, skirmishes, whatever. So that makes her a bit uncomfortable, because I don't tend to do skirmishes, so I personally don't feel like... I feel like Jade is kind of more of a mid-game unit, like she doesn't benefit from early game rings as much. She just comes a little bit late, in a class that is not that good, and with like some very strange growths, because unlike Louis, who's like the other early game armor that is very tanky and does a lot of damage, Jade is going for that so commonly seen and yet so wrong and so useless role of the balanced armor. No guys, I swear, I'm an armor, but I don't get doubled, I have a bit of speed. Yeah, I know my weakness is supposed to be magic, but I swear, I have a bit of resistance. All this at the exchange of what? Strength and defense, which are actually like her selling points. So Jade, in my opinion, if you really want to invest in her, is asking for a reclass. And with a unit that isn't too comfortable in her starting class, in my opinion, has a bit of a hard time getting skills, because she needs some actual investment, not just equipping them, but actually like using bone fragments or skirmishes if you want to get skills on her. Then also asking for, generally just asking for a lot of investment for not the best performance ever She does have a strangely high magical growth that might make her into a decent, like, axe-wielding griffin knight. Maybe she's also decent, like, as a warrior with the shining bow, kind of like Anna. She's not as high investment as other units I've mentioned in this game, but definitely high investment and definitely not a good start, so slightly under Anna for me, and honestly I'm going to lower Citrinne already. I'm sorry Citrinne, but you really are as bad as they come, I'm sorry to say, because yeah, being a mage is just screws you up in this game. I'm sorry. So yeah, that's where I put Jade, low D tier. Hope you're not too offended. I'm actually going to put this here. That's okay? Yeah, maybe it's slightly better, no? So alright, yeah, Jade is there. Not a crazy unit, doesn't have anything too unique. And as I said, bases and growths aren't anything insane, so neither the stats, nor the class, nor the recruitment time are stellar. She just suffers from all of that, and still is a bit more useful than other people, but yeah, she's just stuck there, right? Nothing too unique. Okay, pretty unique unit to discuss here. Yan is in the same class as Framme. He's a martial monk, potentially able to promote into a martial master or a high priest, or to reclass into anything else. And I guess that's really the selling point for Yan. He has decent growths, but he has a very, very particular personal skill that I think a lot of us misunderstood by the time the game came out. Yan doubles class growths, right? So ideally you want Yan to be in a class with very high class growths, because he's going to just get a lot out of those. For example, I think Berserker gives plus 30 strength growth. Even though Yan's strength growth, his personal strength growth isn't that high, if he becomes a Berserker, he's going to get a plus 60 strength growth, which is just insane to think about. Maybe more like to the point, he doesn't have horrible magic, and he might suffer a little bit during Martial Monk, because Martial Monk class growths aren't very high. But if you decide to promote him into a High Priest actually has very good class growths for magic, very decent for speed and for resistance, so he basically turns into a very competent magical unit. With Yan, it's really all about how much you want to invest. When do you want to start investing? Because obviously, if you are talking about reclass, we might have to wait a little bit before he has the ability to get the proficiencies to get him into something interesting. But this is a guy that basically his personal skill is asking you to reject utility and go for ball of stats type of unit, right? I didn't see that the first time I used him. I promoted him into a Martial Monk, Martial Master, sorry. Martial Monk is the base one. And I have to say, as a Martial Master, he's very unremarkable. And I think I can say with a lot of confidence that he probably performs just as well as Framme. But he does have that like doubling class growth thing going for him, so he has a bit more potential, and training him is a lot easier than training Anna because he can heal. He can heal, so as long as you don't reclass him, you can get the High Priest promo very easily, and then he should get a lot better. Does that make him better than Anna? I don't know. Maybe I haven't used him enough to have like a set opinion on Yan. I don't feel like Anna has a higher pick, definitely. But I also feel like Yan is very easily trained if you keep him as a healer, very difficult to train if you reclass him, more than Anna even. So what does that make him? I guess his average training is as difficult as Anna, and his final point is lower than Anna. Meaning... There we go. Still better than Bunet because I don't like Bunet. And that's the whole point. You can stay there. Like, I do think Citrinne can just have the tactical nuke use. Bunet is just very unremarkable, mid-game, all that. Jan has some utility. He's just... For a trainee, he might be the most pathetic trainee we've got ever since, the trainee trend started with Donnell. Donnell is better than this guy in his own game. Mosu is better in Fates, and Cyril is better in Three Houses, and I'm not afraid to say all of this. Jan, just like any unit in this game, you might be trainable, but you're definitely not easy to train. Kagetsu. Okay, interesting unit here, Kagetsu, because when I discuss a unit that I consider is good, I always talk about uniqueness, right? For example, these four guys really, have a unique class. Chloé has the uniqueness of being the only flyer during the early game, and Etie maybe doesn't have a lot of uniqueness, but she does have like a very solid stat line. Which I guess summarizes my opinion about Kagetsu. His starting class is pretty common. He's a Swordmaster, the promo for Sword Fighter. Not a difficult class to get into, really. You just need Sword Proficiency, and there you go. The thing is, Kagetsu is an exceptionally good Swordmaster. Why? Well, because he would be an exceptionally good absolutely anything physical. Because he's a fucking ball of stats. High strength, high skill, not even low defense. Like, this guy is so good. So good. Very good offenses, very decent defenses, the ability to reclass into a lot of promoted classes at the beginning because he's already promoted. He's kind of the trendsetter for the promoted class scene. When you get Kagetsu, he's definitely going to be more powerful than most of your units. As a sword fighter, he's going to be noticeably better than Diamant, even if trained up. Honestly, I think even if promoted. And you can just reclass him into another class that maybe takes advantage of his good base speed and growth speed, and that is traditionally a bit slower as a class. Like, for example, Wyvern Knight. Wyvern Knight Kagetsu is one of the most abusive things you have ever or will ever see in your life in a Fire Emblem game. Like, this guy is insane. The damage is just crazy, the reliability is crazy. He comes trained up, like, you don't have to worry about growth, you don't have to worry about anything, just his bases alone. And, getting some rings and getting the minimum average stat growth for a while, carry him into the late game. Incredibly good physical unit, better than Diamant even. I wouldn't put him over Ivy because of Ivy's uniqueness. Lindon is just a hell of a class. And if Kagetsu was a royal and he had like a unique class that, for example, was the only class to get Astra in the whole game or something like that, or something busted like Luna or Ignis, or maybe I would put him even higher. But as it stands, like, top 2 in the whole game so far, he's pretty generous, and I think I'm comfortable putting him there. As you can see, I've complained a bit about mid-game units, and then the first 2 units you get just after losing the rings. These 2 units that have no access to counter for a while, that have no access to build plus something, they are this good because they simply don't need it. And honestly, I think Kagetsu for a long while in your army simply will not need a ring at all, because other units actually require a ring to help. Kagetsu is just waiting to maybe get, I don't know, Roy in the future and even more stats with that. He's just that good. So yeah, very good unit. Physical role, definitely. Don't reclass him into a mage. Aside from that, he can do anything. and with less investment than Diamant. So yeah, maybe Diamant's pick is like a slightly better considering the uniqueness of successor soul triggering and all that, but Kagetsu's stats are just so overbearing that I can't put him lower than Diamant. I'm sorry. Now, when you compare Kagetsu to a unit like Lapis, obviously Lapis is going to seem like she has a lot of shortcomings, and that would be because she actually does. And I know Lapis is a fan favorite, and I know people really want to justify using a character that looks like the protagonist of Licorice Recoil, but Lapis isn't that good. And it's just that simple. She's very fast and nothing else. And I think Engage is not a game where being very fast and nothing else works. You need to have at least a minimum offensive ability, because anyone can turn decently fast with the help of, you know, Speed Taker and equipping Lynn's Ring and stuff like that. But getting stronger is something that you know, maybe other units are going overkill to overkill levels with, like I talked about Etie. Lapis is stuck in an uncomfortable position. Her growths are just focused on speed. Strength just isn't that high. Has a bit of magic, it's going nowhere. I've heard that reclassing her into a Griffin Knight and making her into sort of a mixed unit and using the Levin Sword can save her performance a little bit, but I think reclassing her into a fast class is a bit redundant, so I doubt that's very good. If I was going to reclass Lapis, it would be into something that gives her higher strength, like for example, I don't know, Wyvern, Great Knight even, but those don't seem like incredible options. Yeah, she just falls short in terms of stats, brings nothing incredibly new to the table, and faces like very, very, very heavy competition, because if you are not a fan of reclasses, you might have noticed that she's a foot-locked sword unit, and she has to compete with these two guys over there and the forcefully deployed main protagonist. So yeah, Lapis is not in a good spot. I'm sorry to say that I'm going to put her in D tier. I don't know how low. Definitely higher than Jade, and I think just by virtue of her high speed, I'm going to give her the edge over Anna. But that's it. That's it. Like I can't put her over Boucheron, in all honesty. Even though I think she might be a bit more entertaining to use, it's true that Boucheron has better combat potential and still has the Mage Cannoneer niche. So yeah. Sorry Lapis, you stay right there. Okay, Lindon. Lindon is actually quite an interesting unit, not one I've tried, to be honest, but I've heard a lot about Lindon and about Lindon's like unique capabilities, and most of them stem from two facts, right? One of them is he's pretty late game, like one of the latest joining units in your army. So that means he comes as a kind of a set piece, you know? You're not going to do anything too unique with him because he is the unit he is, and you don't have enough time to reclass him and to get him a lot of skills or a lot of, you know, into a physical role basically, because he's a mage, so he works best as a mage. But he does have a very weird thing about being able to crit and get criticals more reliably than anyone else. So if you give him stuff like Wrath, and I don't know what other things boost your critical, like Boon of Helios, I guess, something like that. If you give him basically like crit boosting capabilities, he has like one of the best chances at like doing a crit build by the end of the game, which is like very, very, very particular, and it's definitely a niche that I would like to explore sometime in the future. I don't think I can put Lindon higher than D tier, but also I don't think I can put him lower than D tier because this is a unit that comes very late into the game, non-existent investment is required, he's just ready to go. Oh no, I'm low in units, I need a mage. Here's Lindon, and you put him in your army and you're good to go. So I value those types of units, which is why I'm not going to put him that low. I definitely think that he's, for example, better than Lapis, who would require a lot of investment to maybe be a bit boring, just, you know, a physical combat unit. This guy at least has the crit thing going. So I'm going to put him here just under Boucheron for all the mage cannoneer reasons I've given before. I understand he's not crazy or anything, like he's not game breaking. The crit builds I've mentioned shouldn't be anything insane, but the fact that a unit that joins so late still finds the time to be, like, you know, usable, I think that's to be celebrated, so I'm going to put him there. Oh, Louis. Okay, very interesting unit to discuss here, because this is the prime example of early game capability, right? This guy comes with very high defense and very high strength that stays relevant even in Madeline mode. I can absolutely, you know, swear by that being true. Louis has a lot of defense and a lot of strength, meaning he's going to be useful as a wall, he's going to be useful to deal with any physical enemy really, he's going to one-shot a lot of enemies with effective damage, he can even one-shot like cavalry, Madeline mode, crazy stuff like that. And he's also pretty versatile, considering you can give him a lot of the early game rings, meaning if you feel like you want him to be more mobile, you can give him Sigurd, and suddenly you have well, sort of a rocket armor ready to go into anywhere, and with the highest override damage you will see in a long time. But if you want to stay safer, you can go for something like Roy, or maybe even Marth, and then you boost his offensive capabilities a little bit or a lot, I guess, depending on the... Basically, Marth only focuses on offense, Sigurd makes him very versatile, and Roy gives him just even better stats. But Roy is a bit late, so maybe Roy isn't worth considering. I think Louis is a hell of a unit. I think his early game contributions are so good that he shouldn't be ranked lower than C tier just due to that. Like, at least even better than this, like even B tier, definitely. The problem is that his stat line does suffer a little bit by the end of the game, like having a unit that is so tanky and so strong and really nothing else is a bit of a one-trick pony and does get old after a while, but he stays relevant for very long. So I can see that those stats being translated into great things in the future. I've just never seen it work. I think he's more of an early game unit and he should be valued for what he can do during the early game and not much else. In that sense, he really falls short of Chloé. Chloé is just good in early game but also in late game. I think I can consider him to be better than Goldmary because he's as good in the early as Goldmary is in the late, if that makes sense, but good performance in late game is not that valuable because you have more people in your army. So I'm going to put him there in B tier. I want to give some love to Louis here. Hope you all agree. And yeah, let's go with the next one. Being Lumera, who's not applicable, and I'm also going to put Marnie in does not apply. I think that's something logical to do because we're going to discuss Madeline now, and yeah, like they are basically sisters from the same mister. Well, you know what I mean. So yeah, these units are unplayable. The playable unit that you get from DLC is Madeline. Now, I had some bad things to say about Gregory, sorry, that don't really apply to Madeline. I think Madeline does work and is kind of, I mean, DLC is something that shouldn't exist at all. But if you're going to pay for a unit, at least let it be as good as Madeline, right? Sort of bringing the same things as Louis is to the table. Ball of stats, high defense, high strength, but as a promoted unit. Meaning these aren't stats that you're going to need to train during the whole game and then maybe they don't stay as relevant in the late game. No, this is a unit thought out to have high enough stats to be a reliable tank even in the late game. And let me tell you, if you give her something like Hector Ring, Ike, Roy, anything that generally boosts defensive capabilities, she's going to perform very well as a tank. And I have absolutely no complaints with her being able to tank like any physical enemy in the game when I use her. It's true that I think I had a holdout plus, meaning she was never like the enemies physically couldn't kill her in a single round of combat, which can be helpful when there's like some maze mixed in and whatever. But she's just very solid, has a very solid stat line. I don't think she's like insane or anything, but she's basically like better Goldmary in that sense. And I think better than Louis also. I wouldn't put her over Céline, because I think Céline does combine like early game performance with late game potential. And Madeline does suffer a little bit from not being too flexible, like speed is far gone. So reclassing her into anything that gives her actually speed is probably a bad idea. You just want her to keep being a tank. And honestly, being a general is probably the best option. But you could try like Berserker or maybe Wyvern and patch up the speed a little bit and she might function fine. I just don't think she's great at doing any of those. I think she's just a unit thought out for you to, if you really like generals, this is the unit that is supposed to be a general by the end of the game. And in that sense, she is slightly superior to Louis. She brings the sauce, and she doesn't have the early game performance, but honestly, yeah, the early game performance is important enough that I want to put Louis over her also. But in direct competition with Goldmary, she's clearly better. That's it. Yeah, that's it. So that's all I have to say about Madeline. Then goes another one of the four hounds. This is Mauvier. Mauvier is a weird unit. Kind of like a filler unit. Very weird class. I don't even remember the name of his class. A Royal Knight, it's called. Kind of like a Holy Knight from Three Houses, in the sense that it's a lance and healing using class, meaning he has a decent amount of magic, he can go for some mixed damage with the flame lance, his physical combat is still decent enough, he's tanky, he's not that slow, he has the ability to use staves, but not that many up to B rank. He's just like good enough to come into your army to do his job. The definition of a filler unit, really. And he has some good synergy with some rings. Like I tried him with Veyle and I was surprised by how useful it is to basically be able to stick Veyle on someone whose combat isn't that incredible, to be able to dance for a large group of good combat units. Having cavalry movement is obviously appreciated. Having the ability to heal you, the ability to use staves is obviously appreciated. Probably works also very well with Micaiah. I'm guessing with Erika to potentiate his battle capabilities. He is a bit late into the game, so he does come by a point where maybe he doesn't get a lot of very useful stuff to do. But just base potential and not needing investment, it's definitely an upgrade to Lindon's situation, right? So I feel like I have to put him C tier at least. And I'm going to put him over Clanne but under Fogado, which I know is a weird place to be in, but Clanne, yes. Clanne is bad, and Fogado isn't that bad. That's my point. The only reason Clanne is there is because of his early game contributions. Meanwhile, Fogado can actually do some combat for a long portion of the game. Mauvier just comes in a bit too late. And coming in late in this game can be excused because you do need like a very strong army to face the 5 last maps or so. But yeah, maybe Mauvier isn't as essential to your final team as a late unit like I don't know, Merrin is, right? He has his role, he performs it well, maybe, you know, reclassing him into a Griffin and keeping the exact same ranks is also an option, and he does very well as that as well. Royal Knight is, you know, it's a fun class. They decided they wanted a playable Royal Knight, and who am I to say no to that? Speaking of fun new classes, there's Merrin, a unit that comes in the brand new Wolf Knight class. A mounted dagger user, which if you have paid any attention to the game means extremely versatile, fast, and yes, overall very annoying for the enemies to defeat, because Merrin is both dodgy, hard hitting kind of, and also even tanky enough to be able to do good combat against groups of enemies. By the time you get her, she's insane. By the time you get her, she has one of the best performances in your army, probably the best performance for like a mounted unit. Range is incredible. You know, S-rank daggers are also nice to have, I guess. Swords you're not going to use a lot, but those daggers with silver daggers attacking from afar are insane. Insane. What's the problem? The problem is that she doesn't scale that well into the late game. She's a bit lacking in terms of strength. She doesn't have the best reclassing options ever because she kind of wants to keep being a Wolf Knight, sort of, because the daggers are doing well for her, and she's not that tanky. She's not even that fast. Honestly, Wolf Knight is doing a lot for her in terms of stats. So if you want to have a Wolf Knight in your army, just pick Merrin, and she's going to do a good job. An exceptionally good job, even for most of the mid-game. And when you get into the late game, you're going to have to find a way to patch up that low strength of hers. Because as your units start promoting, she is already promoted, she doesn't get to do a lot, and I mean, she's good, but she's not insane. Kind of comparable to Fogado in that sense, but a better performance. I would even put her the highest in C tier. I'd say she's the unit that signals the average performance for a unit for me. In the sense that 0 early game contributions, incredible mid game contributions, and middle and end game contributions mean that on average, she has an average contribution to the game. Does that make sense? It does to me. So yeah, on average, she's a good unit to have. A unit I would have. That's all I can say. Counter would be great, and some stuff would definitely be great to have on her by the time you get her, but her performance is going to fall off a little bit, like around the port part, and then you get the ability to get to give her skills from the secondary set of rings, so she doesn't suffer that much. She's okay. She's just, you know, not as crazy as how well she performs by the time you get her shouldn't be an indication of how well she's going to perform for the rest of the game. It's kind of what I'm trying to warn you about. So use her with care try and give her some goodies so she can build up into a better unit in the future if you're planning to keep her. And that's all I can say. Solid unit, so no complaints really. Merrin is not playable. Okay, very interesting unit here, DLC unit, Nell. Now, the DLC definitely realized that we had a low amount of units with Dragon Battle style, and they decided to add 2 new units. One of them is Nell. And Nell is definitely the underwhelming one of the two, because she goes for that role that I've mentioned before, I think it was with Jade, of the balanced unit. She has a decent amount of strength, a decentish amount of magic, defenses are sort of there, and she does have a good amount of speed, but I'd say her combat is less than stellar. Basically all her contributions to the army rely on using a good ring and getting more use out of that ring than anyone else. I was able to see this work with Chrome. I think the Chrome ring works pretty well with a dragon, and she actually made a very good use out of the extra boost of magic you get on engage. Veyle is also probably a very good ring for her to have. Sigurd, I'm guessing, synergizes very well with her lance usage. Maybe even just giving her a magical ring and turning into a magical unit, sort of. She's going for that versatile role that is nice to have on a dragon unit, because the other 2 dragon units we had before the DLC were definitely physical and magical only. So having Nell is good, it's a nice addition, but it's not a game-breaking unit by any means. She's like good. Performance by the end of the game is going to be a bit better than what Mauvier and that, and she does get more time to shine, but nothing too crazy. Honestly, like in here, a bit better than Merrin, because I might be forgetting. This is a stupid reason to put a unit here, but I'm going to put her over Merrin because I might be forgetting about the stuff that she can do and others can't. But I can say this much. The stat line is a bit disappointing, and the growths and the, Dragonstone usage don't compensate for the fact that her speed isn't even overkill enough to double everything, and her physical and magical damage are plain not that great. So we are not talking about a Lapis situation here, but we are talking sort of a Merrin situation. Only instead of daggers and cavalry, we have the more valuable dragon battle style. I think it's fair to put her there. Alright, Pandreo. Pandreo is a unit that I've completely turned my mind around. I actually used to think that Pandreo wasn't good at all, and I've completely changed my mind about that. Yeah, I think Pandreo is one of the best healers in the game. I don't think he's as good as Hortensia, and I can tell you already that he's going to be under Hortensia, somewhere under Hortensia, because Hortensia is just a direct upgrade of him. In a lot of aspects, magic might be lower for Hortensia, but she has the unique ability, the unique class with being able to not use up, a staff. Then she also has flying, which is very useful. Pandreo is like, he's footlocked. If you want to reclass him into something else, then once again, sort of like the mage situation that has been happening all the time, the options aren't the best. Definitely fully focused on magical performance. High Priest is probably like the best endgame class for him to stay at, and his staff rank is S, so he is an incredibly good healer, and one you should always consider. Like, if you want to deploy a healer, even by the end game, probably his base stats are good enough to do a good amount of healing and yes, staff usage and everything. But I should also consider that by the time you get him, his combat is very good. And that's something that he competes directly, like he shines at that Hortensia definitely doesn't. By the time you get him, his combat is actually, I'd argue, probably the best out of the Pandreo, Fogado, Bunet trio, which is a bit ridiculous considering these two guys only have combat going for them. This guy is able to both double and destroy armors, and also do very good, like, supporting things. So I think he's very solid, better than Etie because of no investment, and I'll just keep him there. The Hortensia Pandreo debate is one where I definitely feel Hortensia comes out winning, but he does have a bit of combat going for him, so I'll give him that. And no investment is like very, very, very nice because the guy just comes ready to go. Doesn't really miss anything important because Celica and Micaiah are good when you can equip them, not because you inherit anything insane. Yeah, it would be great to have like resonance or whatever, but it doesn't hurt him as much as it hurts other units to miss Vander, for example. So yeah, Pandreo can be there. Pandreo can be there on A rank. Panette, Pandreo's sister, and the definition of a physical nuke, right? Like a factor of strength, good skill, decent enough speed to not get doubled, and then defenses are like middling, lots of HP. If anything, her HP makes it very easy to go for like a Wrath build, or like very, very, very high critical builds, because her personal also gives her an extra critical when she's not full HP. So yeah, going for a critical build is kind of nice, Berserker, Killer Axe, and there you go. Maybe you could go Warrior, get at very low health with Wrath, do it with the Killer Bow. That would be maybe a bit safer for you to not get countered. She's just the poster girl for I have a lot of strength and I just want a build that uses this strength. So basically any build that allows her to incorporate a bit of speed taker, a buff to speed, a buff to stats in general that compensates her being so focused on strength is good. Kind of like Etie, but slightly worse in the sense that she's not. If you've been training Etie a bit, first of all, she has more contribution during the game, and second of all, she has like I feel she's probably at a higher point than Panette, because while Etie's speed is a bit middling, I think Panette's is slightly worse, right? And strength is not even that different, considering Panette is in a like very strength focused class. I think if you were to promote Etie into like reclass her into warrior, the strength would actually be like eerily similar. They are very similar units in a way. Yeah, I just think Panette is slightly inferior, not to the point where she's unsalvageable, but she does miss the early game and everything, so I don't know, nothing too crazy, but like here, better than Céline is good, and yeah, like her joint performance might not be as noticeable as Merrin's, but you have to think about long-term performance. Long-term, Panette is great. As I said, any build that wants strength, Panette is the poster girl. Very good mage cannoneer, if we're talking about it, much better than Boucheron, maybe the only other unit that can compete for that niche, but with the advantage of having better stats on base and not needing the babying that Boucheron has to go through. Also good if she stays as a berserker, and good as anything physical, really, as long as you don't want to make her into a tank or something ridiculous like Honestly, even like a Swordmaster would work on her, because that would be just like the highest attack Swordmaster ever. Just don't expect her to be very tanky, and try and take advantage of her personal by giving her Wrath as soon as possible, because she joins at the same time as Ike, the Ike emblem, so you just give her Ike for a bit, or you give him some both fragments, you get Wrath, and then she crits everything like a monster. Okay, here's a unit that I actually put in the right place, but I'm going to call this unit Neil, just in case. This unit is Neil, Nell's brother. Where's Nell? Here. And out of the true dragons we got in the DLC, this is definitely the strongest, right? Nell was going for versatility, sort of fast, a bit of magical, you know. With Neil they just went mask off, fuck it, we want to do the tanky dragon, right? We have the versatile dragon, the magical dragon, the fastish combat dragon. This is going to be the slow, tanky, bunch of strength, bunch of defense dragon. And it works really well for him, because that's a stat line that works very well for the dragon class. If you want to go for reclasses with Neil, that's completely understandable also, like I'm sure he performs very well as a wyvern. As a general even, I think he would have a stat line very comparable to Marnie, but he has dragon combat style going for him, and that's something to not be underestimated. He makes very good use of it, and it makes him into an almost unkillable monster, to be honest. Like, I don't want to say he's one of the best units of the game or anything. He does have his shortcomings. By the time you get him, or with the level you get him, he's not as incredible as you might believe, but the synergy he can get out of the Hector emblem, the Ike emblem, the Roy emblem, the little buffs that Dragon gives to that are just so good, and he's so solid. And unlike Nell, this guy knows how to use a Dragonstone, which might be a bit ironic to say, but I know exactly what I mean here. But he makes a much better use of Dragonstones because of his strength being so massive that Dragonstones actually allow him to go for one-shots. Camilla emblem is probably pretty okay because of his attack being so high to do like massive AoE damage. He's good. Neil is very good. The strongest unit to come out of DLC, in my opinion, probably, which is why we are going to put him as high as A tier over Etie, definitely. But I'm not going to put him over Pandreo or Hortensia because I really value the utility these two bring. But yeah, there you have it. I do feel like Alear's uniqueness is a bit more difficult to contest than just saying I have, dragon combat style. And Alear is a lot more flexible for reclasses and everything. Like, you can do a lot of different things with Alear that you simply can't with Neil, because Neil is just too slow and too focused on strength to go for anything else. Alear really is like the better version of Neil, like has all the versatility but also decent class, and if you want to go for something else, then there's that, and well, there's no other unit that gets as many chances to level up and to do contributions to your army than Alear. Meanwhile, Neil, you recruit him level 20, I'm assuming you're going to start using him around chapter 10, misses a bit of the early game. I will take that into account also as a bad thing. Maybe he should be slightly higher, but I think he can do some game breaking stuff, but his base stat line isn't that crazy, so he needs a bit of help to get into that. He has the potential, but maybe needs a bit of investment, and I'm not comfortable putting a unit like that like too high on the A tier or S tier. So there you have it, Neil. That's a good position for you. Then we have Rosado. Interesting unit right here. Interesting unit. I said with Chloé that you're not going to get a physical, how did I say it? A physical flying combat unit for a very long time after her. And in fact, you only get one, Rosado. You get Rosado on chapter 16, which is like well late into the game. And actually it's chapter 15, I think. I don't remember exactly the number, but it's the beach chapter, the same chapter as the same map as Goldmary. And Rosado, when compared to Goldmary, maybe comes out losing a little bit in terms of stats, but comes out winning in terms of utility. Like, basically Rosado's biggest shortcoming, in my opinion, is he doesn't have a lot of build. And because of having a slightly low build, access weight him down, and then he doesn't get to take that much advantage of his actually very good speed, and so his combat isn't stellar. He does have decent bulk, very decent damage, and they give you Rosado paired up with the Erika ring by the time you get him, so they are sort of telling you like, yeah, okay, this guy has his shortcomings, but you can compensate them. But you have to understand, Rosado is also in one of the best classes in the game, so if he's not being crazy, if he's not like breaking heads, like enemy heads with this as a wyvern, then what other option does he have? Like, I did turn him into a berserker the first time I got him, because by that time I was using every flyer in the game, so I didn't want a fourth flyer. I was using Chloé, Ivy and Hortensia, so I didn't want Rosado to also join the team and have like 4 flyers around. I turned him into a berserker, and turns out that his decent base defense plus the massive HP pool you get as a berserker were good enough to tank enemies in hard mode. I don't think it would work that well in Madeline mode. I think Wyvern is really one of the best classes for Rosado to shine at. He just desperately needs build. And the way to get build is Leaf. And Leaf takes a little bit of time to come. So for some chapters, Rosado is going to be a bit of a liability. And then you can learn like build +2, build +3, maybe even give him the Leaf ring. And suddenly he becomes much better, and noticeably so. A Leaf Forge is also very good, like making any of his axes like much easier to wield is going to benefit him immensely. Basically, Rosado has the speed and has the damage, but is getting weighted down so much that he doesn't get to show them off. So if you know those little tricks, and they are investments, but they are like little investments that I think the difficult thing is noticing them, not actually doing them. If you know them, Rosado is pretty capable, so I think I want to put him over Goldmary, and I do really appreciate the low investment, but it really is kind of similar for them, right? Like if Rosado started, and you can do this just by reclassing, if you reclass Goldmary into a wyvern, you reclass Rosado into a hero, then aren't the roles kind of reversed? I do think Rosado is slightly better, and the starting class has to do with this also. I'm just going to keep Rosado there. These units are pretty comparable. Good filler physical units, solid as fuck, good stats. Yes, you have to know what to do with them. Rosado has the axe proficiency going. Goldmary has the lance proficiency going. They are going for slightly different roles, but more or less they can be comparable. So yeah, Rosado honestly like one of the best axe users in the game, in my opinion. Because if you notice here, I've only put Panette Panette over him and Neil, but that's not even in the vanilla game, so yeah, Panette. That should tell you something. Everyone else is using a different type of weapon. Axes are a bit unfavorable. They normally turn you into a slightly bad unit, but Rosado makes them work, and I appreciate that. Speaking of axes, the absolute most filler unit in this game, in my opinion, Saphir. I can't for the life of me know what Saphir is supposed to do. She's a physical unit, that much is clear. Good strength, not even horrible speed. Average defenses, resistance is poor. Sort of going for a Panette build, but much later into the game, at a point where I don't know if I want to invest into Saphir, and Saphir is kind of asking for that investment, maybe reclassing, maybe getting some skills from the rings, and I don't know. I feel like she's a bit too late to do that, and she has a bit of a bad start compared to units that come in later but are more competent, like Mauvier. Mauvier is good enough for me to justify using him because, you know, low investment, just roll him into the endgame and you're done. You don't even have to give him a ring. But Saphir is purely focused on combat. Not even Lindon dares to be that focused on combat by the time you get him. So what can you even do with Saphir? I don't know. I feel like Saphir might be one of the units I'm the least knowledgeable about. I wish I could say more about her here. I feel that Lindon is slightly superior, and I feel that she does bring more to the table than these units I've talked about. So I'm just going to put her directly under Lindon because of my knowledge of Lindon's critical builds. I think she also has a crit related skill, sort of, although I might be thinking about Merciless, which comes from Warrior. Yeah, it's just that Warrior start is so weird. Yes, you know. Maybe if you were a more interesting class, or if your stats were clearly focused into something else, but feels like you're a bit of a decaf Panette coming too late into the game. That's my opinion on Saphir at the moment. Might change in the future, I don't know. Maybe if I use her more. I did give her like a short trial last time I beat the game, and I wasn't too impressed. She just compares unfavorably to the people you have at that point, but without, you know, any supporting or any uniqueness. So yeah. Ooh, baby, yes. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. This is Seadall. And when you say the word support, when you say the word utility, this is who you're talking about. This is the god of utility, the god of support. Because leaving aside the Enchanter class that I haven't talked a lot about, but I feel like basically anyone fits into Enchanter if you want them to. One of the classes that was included in DLC. The other only two classes that get Chain Guard in this game are, you know, main monk into main monk. Wow. Martial monk into martial master, which is like the healer type, and the dancer. Dancers in this game have the ability to use a chain guard so that if they are full HP, they block an incoming attack to an adjacent ally, and they can also dance and give an extra turn. So they are incredibly useful in enemy phase, they are incredibly useful in player phase, and they can dance multiple times thanks to one of the rings having dancing capabilities, which is the Veyle ring. And if you're using DLC, they can also dance for a unit, having Veronica to dance for someone using Veyle, and then you can do like multiple dances. You can have a dancer with counter to reposition into a good spot. That's something that I feel has almost never happened before. technically, if you had the DLC in well, Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn do have the ability to have dancers with counter. And in 3 houses, you can have the Feathers of Dromi, which is DLC only, and give them to your dancer, and after dancing they can reposition. But in this game it's just so seamless, so useful, the position is so good, getting in, getting out, Seadall is so good. And Engage manages to be very, very, very player face focused. It's true that you can do some builds that trivialize certain maps in enemy phase, but most of the game you're going to have to beat in player phase. Like killing certain enemies to make your enemy phase easier is absolutely required, and the fact that every engage attack has to be used in player phase definitely, adds more into that aspect. All of this to say that I think Seadall being able to dance and being able to chain guard makes him into the single most valuable support unit in the game, so much that he multiplies the capabilities of any unit he touches, and I think he's the best unit in the game. I think dancing in this game is so powerful that I'm going to do the thing I don't normally love to do, because I know dancing is good, but maybe not that good. With Seadall, it is that good. Seadall is that good. Seadall is that guy. He doesn't need the ring, he just needs counter, maybe a way to recover HP passively so that he can do another chain guard just after doing the previous one. And yeah, he's just ready to go. He can dance for someone that is warping to warp multiple people. He can dance for someone and then get danced to dance again with Veyle. He can chain guard, and like in a pinch, you can even do a little bit of combat, and he does have probably the best weapon type to use in that situation, which is punching, because he can break daggers, tomes, and bows. So if he can do just a little bit of damage against an enemy, he might be able to render them useless for the rest of the turn. So that's Seadall, I think, the most complete supporting unit in this game. Obviously, Seadall alone can't do anything. He does need the help of the rest of your army. So in that sense, it's a bit weird to put Seadall as the best unit in the game. But I do feel like not using Seadall makes your army immediately much worse. And I really noticed this during Madeline, because first time I beat Madeline in the channel, I didn't use Seadall. Yeah, okay. Well, here we have a row of non-playable characters. I actually think okay, so we have Sephoria, Sombrom, and Somi. Coincidence? I think not, because I always make jokes about Somi being 0 emblem, but that's beside the point. And all of these characters are playable except for Saphir. So I'm also going to put Saphir here already, and these are all the non-playable characters. And we're going to focus on the remaining playable characters. Starting with the last royal to talk about, yes, Timerra. Timerra is a pretty particular unit. Just like the royals, when you talk about Timerra, you don't only talk about her base stats being decent, because they are pretty solid. Nothing insane, not like Ivy Kagetsu Diamant tier stats. But fast enough to... sort of reminds me of Rosado in the sense that she has a lot of speed, but her build is bad enough to make it seem like she's a bit slower, because she gets weighted down by lances very easily. If you manage to get a little bit of build on her, then she suddenly seems to be like a lot faster, one-rounds enemies pretty easily. Her defense is actually very solid. She has a very solid defense base and a decent growth. So just keeping her in her base class, which is sort of a lance fighter, that promotes into a class with a very, very, very broken activation skill called Sandstorm, which instead of doing damage using your strength, uses 150% of your defense. That means that if Timerra activates that, it doesn't matter how strength screwed she is, as long as you have been building her into a tank, she can do a massive amount of damage. And yes, these kind of skills do take into account your total final defense, like after, for example, +8 defense from Ike or stuff like that. She has a good synergy with Ike. That should be like very naturally noticed because she comes with Ike equipped the first time you use her. But she also works very well with Veyle, in my opinion. Decently well with Corrin, to be honest. Very well with Ling. And if she came any earlier in the game, I would consider her to be among the top brass. The problem is that she does come a little bit late, so maybe like she struggles a little bit to stay relevant in this cast of absolutely amazing units. She doesn't have what she needs to be like an absolute top tier. I mean, I definitely have to put her over Nell, because Dragon Combat style versus Sandstorm Picket utility is more or less the same level of uniqueness, and they are pretty similar units, right? Like base lances, a bit of magic, but not too much. They are similar, but Timerra is better. Timerra is better than you and you because of join time. But I'm going to put her over these two as well, because I really think Sandstorm is so broken that if you rely on it activating and everything, you can make Timerra into a pretty busted unit. I will admit I haven't used Timerra that much. Like I'm guessing a bit as to what her potential as both a tank and a physical unit and everything is, but she's good, she's solid, she doesn't need a lot of investment, she has good synergy with the emblems you have by the time you get her, so even if she's missing some, it doesn't hurt her that much. Not the craziest royal, but a good representative of the royals, like maybe the average royal in a way. So yeah, that's a bit over average, middle of B tier. I think that's a comfortable position to put her in, and I'm good with that. I'm good with that. Ooh, Vander. All right, Vander. Vander is the return of the Jagen archetype, right? And the Jagen archetype is basically known for having a strong early game and falling off completely like into the mid to late game and being absolutely useless by the end of it. Vander is the one promoted unit you will get during basically before you lose their rings. So for most of the game, you're going to have units in a tier under Vander that are looking forward to a promotion, while Vander is already promoted and maybe will, even start struggling against the enemies in the map. It's pretty concerning that Vander, already being a paladin, has worse combat than Diamant by the time you get to Diamant, right? So one might be led to think that Vander is completely useless because, because keeping him as a paladin is the only option you have, or because reclassing him into anything is too costly and his growths are bad and everything. If there's a game to make a unit with not the best growths work, it's definitely Engage, right? Any unit can work with investment. But I do have to admit that this game is so focused on building the best possible unit that Vander ends up being quite screwed. And there's no other way to say it. I wish I was able to give you here like the secret recipe to success with Vander, but Vander just isn't that incredible. He's a good unit to have in the early, and you should use him with confidence during the early game, and you should give him whatever kills you need to beat the game or to beat whatever self-imposed challenge you have made. You shouldn't hoard your experience too much, because the little experience you give to Vander is not going to make a difference, right? I honestly think so. But after that, you are probably better off benching him. And I know people are going to argue a lot of things here and say that if you go for this, he's actually great because that extra movement is absolutely essential for something or other, but I'll be honest to you guys, by the time I reach the bridge, Vander is probably going into the bench. And I'm a big defender of Jagen archetypes and early game archetypes and stuff like that. But in a game so focused on builds, on making like the best possible unit, I think Vander only deserves to be considered for a single thing: his early game contributions. That said, his early game contributions are good enough to put him on D tier in my opinion, because yes, as I put Framme on D tier mostly for early game, and then later on maybe only Chain Guard ability, Vander is like only early game combat, right? So in that sense, he's sort of on par with Lindon and Saphir, right? These guys are like only utility, actually like this. Utility and combat only for the late game, combat only for the early, combat only for the late. That's kind of my assessment. I think early game takes precedence over late if you have to make a decision. I do think that you can reclass Vander into something else, give him stat boosters, Erika emblem to make him into a stronger unit, and to ignore the fact that he has low stats, and somehow compensate his speed with a speed taker, and then do like a rally with the Robin emblem or something. Like, yeah, you can make him into a monster, but so can you do with like literally anyone else. So why would you? Why would you do it with Vander? Speaking about that, these units, I think their performance is clearly above Anna and Jade, so I'm going to lower Anna and Jade. I've been thinking about this for a while because this is like the highest investment can get. Lapis, I've said some negative things about Lapis, but I do think Lapis can be used. Well, maybe it's a bit too cruel for Anna, but Jade has to go lower. Anna does have the niche. Honestly, Anna has to be higher than Lapis, but it's not going to be higher than that, okay? Okay? I'm going to keep it like that. So, for units on the F tier, it's not obsessing about making like a bell curve. It's just, I think there is a gap of performance between these units and the units in here, and I need to represent that physically. So there you have it. Okay, Veyle. Well, clearly in spoiler territory now, but if you have stayed that long, I've been going for a while now, I should finish soon. Veyle is the last dragon unit we have to talk about, and that's kind of her selling point, right? Literally the last unit you get in the game, and the ability to give her rings and to teach her skills comes even a bit later than that. So she's basically only available for the last stretch of maps before the end game. What is her selling point? Magical Dragon. That's simple. Reclassing Veyle is normally unnecessary and overall a bad idea. If you have a magical ring that you don't have anyone to use with, you can give it to Veyle. She has good enough stats to make use of it. Good synergy with Celica, with good synergy with Micaiah, maybe even more Micaiah than Celica. And as I've been seeing recently, apparently with Soren, which is a DLC ring, she gets a lot of very broken stuff for like building an enemy face build, that is actually not that high investment. It's like you do a bit of vantage and you recover health with flare. So as long as you are transformed with Soren, you can enemy face a lot of stuff. That alone gives her a very, very, very unique niche. Problem is, she might be a bit too late into the game for me to consider her anything higher than B tier. She's just too late to put her higher, but it's a very unique thing she's able to do. Like, Magical Dragon is uncontested in the whole tier, completely uncontested. And it's not as broken as, Tanky Dragon or being there for the whole game, but it's like, as much as it hurts me, it's better than Céline, and it's but I wouldn't put her over Panette. I think this is a good enough spot for Veyle. Looks a bit arbitrary, but you have to understand, Céline doesn't do anything too crazy, right? Nothing too crazy, and I did say that Céline might have to go a bit lower and Alcryst a bit higher in the long run. So these guys do have the long-term performance over her, but here I'm doing the comparison more so with Panette. Panette and Veyle are similar in the sense that they can build into very good offensive attacker and a very good magical attacker. The thing is that she might give you a better final result, but Panette gets to contribute for a little bit longer, so that alone puts her slightly over Veyle. That's just my impression. Feel free to disagree and everything. There you have it. Yunaka, kind of like but I talked about Vander falling off during the bridge, more or less, right? Like the bridge is the point where I tend to bench Vander. Curiously enough, I feel like Yunaka is the one taking over the Jagen mantle, like the carry unit mantle for the rest of the early game until you basically lose the reins. And even a little bit after that. Yunaka benefits from being a thief a lot, because thieves in this game don't get to promote, meaning they sort of have slightly lower stats than a promoted, but much better than the stats you would have as a base class. They go all the way up to level 40, they use daggers, and they are a pretty nifty class to have because they just are very dodgy. They double the effects of the rain as a covert, so you put them into a forest, and instead of getting 30 avoid, they are getting plus 60. And in the case of Yunaka, she's not only getting that, she's also getting plus 15 critical because of her personal killing eyes or born to kill or art of killing or something like that. So she can have some crit potential while being in the forest. And this at the first time I played seemed completely broken to me. Like, it seemed to me like Yunaka was going to be one of the best units in the game. The problem is that you don't really get critical daggers, right? And Yunaka functions very well as a covert unit, as a thief, staying as a thief, but she's never going to get a buff to that chance of critical with her personal, unless you go for something like Emblem Engraves, which I'll admit are pretty powerful and do give you the critical, but if you want that critical to be reliable, it should be because you have an engrave and you have the high critical weapon. And I just don't think that a Peshkats with the Corrin emblem is powerful enough for me to justify using Yunaka and to say Yunaka has like good combat into the late game. Best use of Yunaka? Being so dodgy that enemies refuse to attack her. Weaken enemies with a dagger, potentially, and I've tried this before and I think it's very funny to use. Thieves work very well with Lucina because they do their assistances with daggers, which means they will poison enemies on assistance, which is incredibly useful for bosses also. She worked pretty well as an enchanter for me, but I feel like that was a downgrade compared to Thief, because having the ability to get extra avoid in forests is just crazy. And yeah, like her combat performance isn't crazy. She has some magic because she comes with the Micaiah emblem, and I guess they wanted to make that into an option. But just don't go that way, because she doesn't have enough magic to be magical. Strength is a bit poor, and even speed will eventually need a little bit of help, just a little bit, but enough for me to notice, right? I feel like she's also a unit that suffers a lot when you compare her hard mode and her Madeline mode performance. She's incredibly good in hard mode, and in Madeline it seems like the enemies are getting just enough stats to be able to suddenly survive her, and it's not great to see. But she does have some uses during the early to mid game, like basically you just have her swallow a pure water and you can counter and kill almost any mage for a long while. So being able to battle mages with this is very valuable. Being able to, you know, be a very dodgy unit that enemies just plain refuse to attack because they have no chance to hit is very valuable. And if you combine that into, you know, if you turn her into a utility unit and you see her as a utility unit more than a combat unit, doing stuff like what I told you about the Lucina ring, you might end up, you know, having some fun, but not as crazy of a unit as I used to think, especially because of the stat line, because the stat line is a bit too simple, and because she basically benefits from being a thief and that's it. I do think we have to really value her mid-game contributions, and I think that makes her just slightly under Merrin for me, because they are very similar, their performance is very similar, but Yunaka runs out of fuel too soon and doesn't get to do anything too useful in the endgame. Meanwhile, Merrin has just enough fuel to maybe be a middling unit in the endgame at least, right? Which I know doesn't sound like a compliment, but it's not meant to be. I think they are comparable. It's not a coincidence they both use daggers, because they are both the same type of unit, dodgy, just kind of annoying for the enemies to battle. But it doesn't get, it never gets better than annoying for Yunaka, and it's a bit easier to make it better than annoying for Merrin, but not even that easy. These units are kind of annoying, the three of them, if I think about it. So that's the position for Yunaka. And I'm actually going to... I'm going to end with the other thief in the army, but before that we have to talk about the last DLC unit, Celestia. Counterpart of Zephyr, and even though she's not a royal, she does have a unique class called Melusine. Actually, I don't know if it's called Melusine. I think it is, but I think her class is slightly different from Zephyr's, because Zephyr gets like S rank in tomes, A rank in swords, and Celestia gets the opposite. Which is... Or is it the... I'm having some sort of confusion here. No, Celestia is the one getting S rank in tomes, because Zephyr uses the Georgius one of the times you battle her, so yeah. Okay, so basically they realized Ivy was so good that if they gave you a flying mage as a DLC unit, you would probably take it. And guys, they were right. They were right. Flying mages are broken. The problem? Basically, they kind of nerfed Celestia with the personal ability for the Melusine class, because the personal ability called Soul Blade basically makes it so that sword attacks use the average of your defense and your resistance to calculate damage. The problem is that for the endgame of Engage, most of the enemies are going to have very high defenses on both stats. So it's going to make it so that instead of being able to target the lower defense when Celestia is battling mages, suddenly she runs into problems killing mages because they have high resistance, and when she tries to do physical damage, she can't because they are also using that resistance to tank. So it's a bit weird, and I just thought I should mention it. I have heard that this makes it so that you can do some useful stuff like battling mages with the Levin Sword, because the Levin Sword also kind of calculates damage on defense and resistance, which is just weird to think about. Anyway, as you can understand, just being a flyer and being able to use magic is pretty broken, and it should come as no surprise that I'm putting Celestia automatically on A tier. Not higher than that because Ivy does have some advantages over Celestia. Celestia has lower magic and higher speed, and I feel like one of the best things about Ivy is precisely that she refuses to get in the, I need to be speedy pitfall, and just says, fuck speed, and if anything, I'll get like some way of compensating my lowish speed later. And she goes for overkill magic. Meanwhile, Celestia can run a bit low on magic, which is a problem when you want to use some spell that is going for the one-shot like Thoron, or some spell that is supposed to one-round thing 2 hits like Nova. Celestia just isn't that great at doing combat, and I feel like when I compare her to Ivy, I'm getting less of a combat unit and more of a supporting flying combat, if that's a term that makes any sense. She's still the best unit in the DLC, I think, over Neil and over Pandreo for me, but not over Hortensia. This is how I'm going to rank these 3. Even if it seems a bit weird, because she's helpful to have, but she doesn't have the centralizing role that Ivy has in your army, right? That's the best way I can explain it. She's a good mage and definitely has a much better option as a mage than other units like Citrinne, like Lindon, like Clanne are condemned to do, because they are condemned to not be able to fly ever, because as flyers the only option they would have is what? Magical weaponry like Levin Sword, Flame Lance. So she gets to have something unique, flying and doing magic, being the sort of a Pegasus with magic, if you will. And it doesn't get her quite as high as Ivy, but it gets her to A rank, and I think that's a fair assessment. And finally, I'm going to talk about Selkov. And I think this is going to come as no surprise. I'm going to do a direct comparison to some other character, and that character is going to be Yunaka. Because Selkov is kind of in the same boat as Yunaka, right? His stat line and his proficiencies are kind of asking for him to either stay in the same class as a thief, maybe reclass into a wolf knight, I don't know, but he doesn't want to get too far from where he's at. Of course, he would work as a wyvern knight and everything, but not having proficiencies in those areas hurts him a little bit. So he wants to stay. He wants to stay as a thief. Is he better or is he worse than Yunaka as a thief? Now that's the very difficult question to answer. I really value Yunaka's contribution to the team by the time you get her up to the point where you get Selkov. But it's also true that Selkov's starting stat line is much better than Yunaka's, and even in my wildest dreams, I think I could expect Yunaka to maybe match Selkov in stats, but not to be noticeably better, even at a higher level. So Selkov does have the potential to be that combat thief that you have been looking for, The question is, do you really need a combat thief? Or what the hell are you even going for? The one advantage that he clearly has over Yunaka that doesn't even have to do about the stats is he is a covert unit, just like her, but instead of having a personal skill that gives him a bit of critical, it gives him even more avoid. So on higher difficulties where maybe getting to that 0% enemy hit is a bit unreliable with Yunaka, Selkov has a better chance because of his not quite skill. I'm sure I pronounced that right. The point is that I think he's very comparable to Yunaka. Anything that he can do that Yunaka can't is slightly compensated by the fact that Yunaka has a stronger contribution to the early game. So I'm going to put her over her, but not over Merrin or anything crazy, because I really don't think that he's better than Merrin. I think that they are sort of the same unit, but when you lose one, you get the next one. It's true that he might overlap a bit more with Merrin, and Selkov's performance is definitely more thought out to carry him into the endgame, make him into a capable fighter, but that pales in comparison to just giving him the corrin ring, creating fog around him, and making it so that the enemies literally can't touch him. Is that going to be helpful? Normally no, because if the enemies don't touch him, then how is he going to damage them? But you know, the option is there, and sometimes you find like a surprise pillar or a forest to attack an enemy from, and it's nice to have units like Selkov that can do that, do a fair amount of damage, and then know that the enemy won't dare attack them in enemy phase because they know it's just a waste of time. So with that, I closed this tier list. I was hoping for it to be shorter than most of the ones I've done. I wanted it to be like 2 hours at most, and yet it's coming closer to 3 hours. I'm hoping I can cut a little bit at the start because I don't remember when I started recording. So maybe at the beginning I'm like ranting a little bit and I can cut down a little bit of that, please, because I want a YouTube friendly duration for the video, please. I'm just asking for that. But I'm pretty happy with the result, and we're going to check actually. Well, obviously units that do not apply. Bunet, Citrinne and Jade on the lowest tier. Yeah, unfortunately I think this is all true. This is all true. Units that, yes, they are a bit stuck there, right? Then we have some either high investment or low investment, but not really two shining stars here. Starting with Lapis, Saphir, Vander, Lindon, Boucheron and Framme. Yeah, that's fair. Then we have middling units that have some contributions into the army, maybe some unique spots, some things that only they can do, some things that they are better at doing, but ultimately they aren't crazy. We have Clanne, Mauvier, Fogado, Alfred and Amber, Gregory. We have Yunaka, Selkov, Merrin, and finally Neil. Then on B tier we have units that I think are worth your time using. Well, any unit is worth your time using, but you know what I mean. Units that are slightly over average, units that normally guarantee you having a good result, that are worth your investment if they are a growth project. That is the case for Goldmary and Rosado, for Madeline, Louis, Timerra, Céline, Veyle, Panette, and Alcryst. On A tiers, units that perform even more consistently well, and that are close to being very good if it wasn't for certain shortcomings. Units that I feel like are very easy to justify bringing into your army, and that have, in some cases, like very unique stuff to them. That's the case for Etie, for Neil, for Pandreo, Celestia, Hortensia, Alear, and Chloé. And finally, on the S tier, the absolute best units in the game, The units that if you're playing in any kind of, you know, challenge run, if you're really going for the win, I feel like you should be looking out for these units. They are the best at doing what they do, and this includes only 4 units: Diamant, Kagetsu, Ivy, and Seadall. Pretty happy with the tier list. I don't think I moved around too much. I do think that in between tiers, even if it looks a bit deformed, I'm not going to like move things around just to make it even, because I feel like the gaps are exactly where they need to be to justify like a difference existing between tiers. If you've come this far into the video, thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed. I enjoy talking about Fire Emblem, sometimes a little bit more than I should, because this video is going to do horrible in terms of views. But that's not why we do videos, right? Like we do them because we like the game, and Engage is a game I definitely love, and I think I've said everything I wanted to say about these characters. If you want to see a tier list of the emblems in the future, I guess tell me. It's not part of my plans, but I guess it couldn't hurt, and it's definitely going to be a shorter video in that case. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, consider liking, subscribing, leaving a comment. You know, any support is appreciated. I know people love leaving supports in tier lists, leaving comments in tier lists, because they love telling me how wrong I am and why I'm wrong. If you're going to tell me I'm wrong, at least tell me why. This has been Pomom. See you in my next video. Bye bye.